Hello and welcome to this YouTube tutorial, and today we're going to be building a stopwatch timer using JavaScript. So these are basic JavaScript project which anyone can do after they finish reading JavaScript. So it's fairly basic and simple, and it is good for practicing about functions, about using set intervals. So let's dive immediately into the project. And I'm already in my VS Code, having set up a folder with 3 files with their relevant file extensions, and the index.html, which is going to take our HTML, our script.js, which is going to incorporate our JavaScript, and our style.css, which is the file for our CSS. So in our HTML page, I'm going to create a basic HTML structure, page structure, and then I'm going to link my style sheets. So we do these using these, then we're going to input the href attribute, and we are going to link our style.css, close these up, link our JavaScript, which is done using the script tag and source. Then here I'm going to input my file, and I'm going to load the strategy, JavaScript loading strategy, which I'm going to use differ, and I'm going to incorporate my title to be stopwatch app. Let's just call it that. Within our body section, I am going to start with a div, and in this div I'm going to give it a class of hold container. Divs are containers. So when I say hold container, it makes sense. It is always good to write code which is understandable rather than have a lot of comments, and comment where necessary. I am also going to have another div inside here, and for these I'm going to give these a class. I'm going to call it maybe hold boxes or hold box, because it is going to hold our divs. Which we are going to have sort of a box within our HTML, 4 boxes, one for the hour, the minute, the seconds, as well as the milliseconds. So inside here, inside the whole box, I am now going to create my divs. Oh no, created so div. I'm going to have that div over there, and within this div, so this is the structure that I was talking about. I want to have 2 spans, so I'm going to give this span a class. This is going to have a class of number, and I'm going to give this an ID, which is going to enable me to query through it using the DOM. So I'm going to name this as our number, and here, since it's a number, it's going to start at 00. Then I'm going to have another span element still, and within these I'm going to give this a class of text. I don't need to give it an ID, and here all I'm going to need to input is hours. So we are going to have this div 4 times. So this for the hours, so you're going to have another one. This is going to be for the hours, and then you're going to have the minute. I'm going to change the text in here, the text content to minutes. I'm going to create another div similar. This is going to be for the seconds, and in here I'm going to have seconds. Then lastly, I'm going to have another one which is going to be for the milliseconds. So milliseconds, and here this is going to be milliseconds. I'm just gonna tap that in, but then create it in a sort of way like that. So we are going to have 4 divs. We have for hours, the minutes, the seconds, as well as our milliseconds. Then I am going to create another div inside here. After hold box, I am going to create another one, and for these I am going to give a class, and for this class I'm going to call these buttons, because it is going to comprise of our buttons which you are going to click. We're going to have the button to start, to stop, and to reset the stopwatch. So here I'm going to have a button, and for this button I am going to have a class. So this is going to be start, and then I'm going to have an ID still. I'm going to call this as the start button, and in here I'm going to place the text, which is going to be start. If only I can type start, and then I am going to copy these down, so again and again. So instead of start, this is going to be stop. This is going to be the stop button, and this is going to be stop. Then here I'm going to have a class which is going to be reset. This is going to be the reset button, and here I'm going to have it be as reset. Good. So we save these, and this is going to be our very basic HTML structure. So I'm going to go live using the extension live server provided by VS Code. This is going to take me to my Chrome, and you get these. So we are going to style these using CSS, and we're going to dive right into it. We can already see our hours, minutes, seconds, milliseconds. I want each individual of these to be a box, which is going to be grid. So you're going to style that, and you're going to apply different styles to our buttons over here. So we start with our universal reset in our style.css, which is given started by margin of 0. I'm going to give a padding of 0, and I'm going to have box sizing, which is going to be given by border box. Then I am going to move on to my buttons. Maybe for my buttons I will want the font. Don't need to just put font family inherit, for them to inherit the font family, although I'm not setting a font family. It's given. I'm going to use the default, which is provided by Chrome. So for these, move on to a body. We are going to have a mean height of 100 viewports of height, and then I am going to have a minimum width of 100%. Then I am, instead of minimum width, let's put it at width, not a minimum width. Then I want to display flex. I want to justify the content to the center, and if we go back to our HTML, we see that this content has moved here. I want to place this here at the center, and what we do, we're going to say align items to the center, and then I am going to input flex wrap, so that we can have that adaptability when we are minimizing or maximizing our screen. So from the body, the next thing that we need to style is going to be the whole. I have flexed the whole container, so let's style the whole box instead. So I'm going to have whole box, and for these I am still going to have let me display, since the whole box is holding these 4 divs, I want them to be instead of them being like this, I want them to be flexed. So I think I can explain that in code. So I'm going to have here the display of flex, and then I am going to justify my content. I'm gonna justify this content maybe to the center. Let's have center, and then I'm going to have a flex wrap, of wrap, and what else can we add there? A gap. Yeah, forget about the gap. Can have a gap, and we can have a margin bottom. Maybe margin bottom of 2 rem, because I want that separation. I want, yeah, this is the margin bottom. So we have these. So what I need to do is, for each for these divs, I want to put them in a sort of, I'll put a box shadow, and then I'm going to display grid and place these items to the center, and I'm also going to flex these to be here at the center. So let's do that. So from the whole box, we are now going to style the whole box divs. So there are 4 divs, and for these I'm going to set a width of 150 pixels. width of 150 pixels. I'm also going to set a height of 150 pixels too. And then I am going to have a box shadow of let's have a box shadow of 0 pixels, 5 pixels, 5 pixels, and let it be black. Then I am going to display grid. Remember what we talked about. And if I put it as display grid, I can also simply say place item center. Instead of using display flex, justify content center, and align items to the center, you can just put display grid, place items to the center. Then I can have maybe a flex wrap here, which is going to say wrap. So let's see what happens. We get that, which looks much more better. So let's style our numbers and our text. So these you're going to do, going to have the dot number, and then for the number we can have maybe a font size, give it maybe 1.8 rem. And then we're going to have the font weight be bolder. You can have the font weight be bolder, and we can have something. It's already, the color is already defined as black, so I don't need to change that. Then for the text, let's style these two. Let's say the font size, the font size, you can give it to be almost 1.3 rem. They were not capitalized, so what I will want to do is capitalize them, is get the text transform. It's going to be let's have it as text transform, which is going to be capitalized, and I'm also going to have the font weight be bolder. So this is going to look much more better. There we go. So we get these. Then we need to style these buttons first, and they are contained within a div which has the class of buttons. So what I need to just say here is text align to the center, and I know if I place that in that type of way, it goes yes there. So I'm gonna style now our button. So dot buttons, button, and for these I am going to have them have a padding of 0. Let's put 0.5 rem and 2 rem. Then I'm going to have a border of none. I'm also going to remove the outline, which is usually there by default. I'm going to have an outline of none. I'm also going to transform the text inside these buttons, so text transform to be capitalized, and I am going to have the cursor to be a pointer, pointer. So let's see what we get. Start, stop. I also want to increase maybe the font size within our buttons, maybe give it 1 rem. Yes, for them to be at least a little bit much more visible. So for these, now we're going to style our individual buttons. So start, I will want the color green, means start, even in traffic lights. Then stop, I know it is usually given by red, but for stop, maybe we can have, yes, let's have not the color, because we don't have any text, we want the background color instead. Then for these, let's also have the background color be red. And then for the reset, so dot reset, we are going to input a background color of yellow. So good, so we have that, and you can see that. So this looks good, this looks better. So we move on to styling, not styling, but adding the functionality. So here I'm going to open up my dev tools so that I can be able to see what we are working with here in the console. And the first thing we're going to do is select the relevant DOM elements. So we're going to start with, let's start with the milliseconds box, which is going to be the same as document.getElement by ID. And let me go back to my index.html. So you're going to have the milliseconds number, seconds number, minute number, hour number. We need to select those four. So for these, we're going to have milliseconds. Milliseconds. I don't know whether my S was milliseconds. Okay, milliseconds number, something of a sort. Then I need to select. I'm gonna copy paste these downwards. So I'm going to have the milliseconds, seconds, minutes, hours. So I'm going to remove, so I'm going to call these the seconds, and I'm going to get that. And then for these, I'm going to say this is going to be the minute box. You can call it minute, just call it the minute box. I'm going to change these to minute, and I'm going to have the hour box. Let's call it the hour box. And I am going to call this given by the hour number. So let's console first. Let's console.log. So let's console.log. We see whether we are able to get these. So milliseconds box, get the seconds box, get the minute box, and then get the hour box. Let's see whether we are able to get these in our console. There we go. So we are getting them. Since you want to manipulate these figures using JavaScript, then I'm also going to need to select our buttons. So const get the start button, which is going to be given by document dot get element by ID, which is going to be, I think I gave these an ID of start button. So I'm going to copy these. I'm going to paste this downward. So bottom, stop, and then finally I'm going to have my reset button. So here I'm going to have stop, and here I'm going to have reset. Then let me check whether this is being logged. Start button, stop button, and reset button. So let's see whether we are able to get all those now. Get our start button, the stop button, and the reset button. We are going to add event listeners to these such that when we click, function is going to happen, right? Good. So the next portion of this code is we are going to initialize variables which are going to enable us to increase. Increase the digits. So for example, 00 to 01 to 02 to 03. So here we are going to say let milliseconds be the same as 0. Then I am going to copy this down. So for the seconds, for the minutes, and lastly for the hour. So milliseconds, seconds, get the minutes, and finally we get the hour. Put it as hours, minutes, hours. Good. So having initialized these, and lastly, I want to input a variable which I'm going to assign it to our set interval. So I'm going to call this stop. Let me give it a name as stopwatch timer, because it's a stopwatch which you're building, and I'm going to give it as null, because I want once I click maybe the stop button, I will want the set interval to be reset back to null. So let's first start with our start button. I want something to happen when I click the start button. So I'm going to add the event listener, which is going to be a click. And for this, I'm going to give it a function which is going to be start stopwatch, right? So let's create this function down here. So function start stopwatch, and then I'm going to open this up. So what I want now is let's first start with what happens if our stopwatch timer, if our stopwatch timer is null, then I want nothing to happen, so I'm just going to return. However, if the stopwatch timer is not null, what I want to do is reassign the stopwatch timer to be set interval. Open this up and going to do that, and I'm going to call this every 1 millisecond. So for now, when our set interval is called, what I want to do first is increase the milliseconds. So these milliseconds which we had set here, I'm going to call these milliseconds, and what I want to do is add 1 to it. So each and every time 1 is added to it, and then how many, we ask ourselves how many milliseconds are in a second. I think it's supposed to be 1,000, right? So if our milliseconds is going to be greater than 999, what I want to do is increase the seconds and reset my milliseconds back to 0, so that it starts all over again from 0. Okay. I think we get that, and I think we get that, and we understand that. Then we continue with the function still. So again, if now our seconds have been increased, I want, if our seconds are going to be greater than 59, seconds go to 60, what I want to do here is I want to increase the minutes, our minutes, and then I want to reset my seconds back to 0. Then if our minutes go the way to 60 is going to be greater than 59, what I want to do is increase the number of hours and reset our minutes back to 0. So this is what is going to work. So to illustrate this, I am going now to append these values to these using by manipulating the DOM. So let's do that. Let's start with our milliseconds box, box, and I want the inner text to be milliseconds, right? Let's see if this works. So if I click here, we get this. It's counting already. Then I have not yet added for the second, so I'm going to say second box dot inner text and give this inner text, and I want this to be the same as seconds. Then I want the minute box dot inner text to be the same as minutes, and finally I want the hour box dot inner text to be the same as the hours. So let's save these and we click here again. So after it has reached 999, I want this immediately to convert to 1. It reaches again to 999, this goes to 2 seconds. However, I don't want this to be just plain 2. I want this to work in to have another digit. So I'm going to create a function for that, and that function, let's call this function, let's call it sort time. It's going to take a parameter of time, and here I'm going to say that if our time is going to be less than 10, then what I want to do is return 0 and the time. Else what I would want to do is just return the time. So I am going to call this function in here. So I'm going to call sort time, and this is going to take the milliseconds. So I'm going to need to remove these. Also, this is going to be the same for all these down here. I'll put these here, and then I'm just going to edit it in just a second. So I'm going to call the seconds. Then for these, going to call these as the minutes. And lastly, we're going to have the hours. Yes, so we do that, and when we click here, so we get these so we get 0, 1. So our sort time function works. Then we ask us, then we need something to happen once we click our stopwatch, right? Once we click our stop. So what I want to happen right now, nothing happens. Nothing is happening because we have not added anything. So I'm going to come here and I'm going to say stop button, and I'm going to add an event listener, which is also going to be a click, and I want to have a function which stops. So stopwatch, and I am going to create this function down here. So function stopwatch. It isn't going to take any parameter, and what I want to do is I want to reset my stopwatch timer to null. So I'm going to clear interval, and I am going to call my stopwatch timer. So stopwatch timer, and this stopwatch timer is yes, stopwatch timer, and then I am going to reset my stopwatch timer to null. So let's see what happens. So let's start these. So if I click stop, good, it resets my set interval back to null, and it doesn't remove these values. So that is going to be the work of the reset button. I want that when I click the reset button, all these values are reset back to 0. So that is what we're going to do, and this is going to be reset button. I'm going to add event listener. It's going to still to be the same as click, and I am going to set reset stopwatch. This is a function which I am going to create down here. So function reset stopwatch, and for these reset stopwatch, what I need to do is I am going to call, I'm going to first reset my stopwatch timer back to null. So what I'm going to do here is recall this function down here. So stopwatch, I'm going to call it down here, and then I am going to reset the milliseconds. So the all these which we had up here, the milliseconds, the seconds, the minutes, and the stopwatch timer, all these, I'm going to reset them back to 0. So I don't need to select the stopwatch timer. So I'm going to come down here, and where was it? Where were we? We were here. So remember, using the let keyword, we cannot reassign. We cannot redeclare again, but we can reassign. So we're going to have that there, reset stopwatch, and then I'm going to set my inner text, which is found within the boxes. So dot inner text, and I want this to be reset back to 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to let's have the seconds box, box dot inner text is going to be the same as 0, 0. Then our minute box dot inner text is going to be the same as 0, 0, and finally going to have our box.inner text. We're going to change these back to 00. So we're going to save that, and let's see what happens. So when we click our start button, it starts. I'm going to let it maybe go to 2. If I stop, it stops. If I reset, it resets back to 0. If I start again, it starts. So stop, start, stop, start, reset. Wonderful. So these are simple stopwatch application created using JavaScript. So it's good if you can be able to challenge yourself to build these, and I will attach the GitHub link for this particular project. So thank you.